G'day, g'day. My name's Alan Gamble. Welcome to another episode of Aussie Box Office Charts. A little bit late thanks to the US Labor Day public holiday, but let's dive in to last weekend. A fairly low weekend, but at number 1 was The Naked Gun holding top spot. Weekend 2 bringing in another $1 million for a current total of $4.2 million. Weapons holds number 2 with $930,000. Its fourth week in release, dropping just 33% for a current total of $9.1 million. It is closing in on Sinners at $11 million for the top horror movie of 2025. Andre Rieu's 2025 concert, Waltz the Night Away, takes number 3 with $673,000. Who the fuck is Andre Rieu? We'll dive into that a little bit later and crunch his numbers historically and compare him to all the other musical acts that have released theatrical movies. Freakier Friday comes in at number 4 with another $500,000. Its fourth week of release, dropping 34% for a current total of $5.8 million. And Jaws, the 50th anniversary re-release, brings in $500,000, rounding out the top 5. Moving on to 6 through 10, at number 6, we have Caught Stealing, the new Darren Aronofsky movie. I do talk more about that later in the Cinechums completed section because I did go and catch that. It brought in $470,000 in its opening weekend. Fantastic Four, First Steps, brings in another $300,000. Its sixth week of release, dropping 36% for a current total of $17.4 million. F1 The Movie brings in another $230,000. Its 10th week in release, incredible staying power on that movie. 10th week in the top 10, dropping just 29% for a current total of $29.6 million. At number 9, we have Lokah, Chapter 1, Chandra, a Malayalam language fantasy action movie out of India, directed by Dominic Arun. And rounding out the top 10, Hridaya Poorvam brings in $176,000 in its opening weekend, which is another Malayalam language movie out of India. This one is more of a romantic comedy drama directed by Satyan Anthikat. Opening outside the top 10, we had Param Sundari opened in 11th. We had The Ballad of Wallace Island opening in 13th. Honey Don't open in 16th. And The Toxic Avenger opened all the way down in 29th with a current total of $41,000 in its opening weekend. So kind of a disaster for that one. Alright, so who on earth is Andre Rieu? And why do we see him everywhere in Australia? Posters, DVD shops, he's everywhere. And he has been for years. So Andre Rieu is a Dutch violinist and conductor and the founder and owner of the Johann Strauss Orchestra, the largest privately owned orchestra in the world. Now, owning and maintaining an orchestra is an expensive game, with reported costs of over $1 million a month just to maintain. That cost is covered by ticket sales to their live events, physical media sales of albums and DVDs, which is why you see them everywhere, as well as, more recently, theatrical ticket sales of those live events. And he is massive in Australia. Absolutely massive, with the claim of being the highest selling musical artist in Australia between 2006 and 2011. So let's take a look at how his concert movies rank in terms of opening gross weekends, and then we're going to compare it to all the other massive musical artists with their opening weekends of their concert and performance movies. So this is the opening weekend gross chronologically of as many as I could find of Andre Rieu's concert movies. And you can see, while there is a downward trend post-COVID in 2020, and you can see that 2020 dip, he still brought in $225,000 in 2020. And that was fairly early on in the pandemic when things were fairly closed still. And the Andre Rieu 70 Years Young in 2020 was pre-closure. I think it was in February that year. But you can see there, 1.2 million, 1.4 million, 1 million, 1.1 million. Like, that's big money. Post then, it's been 900,000, 800,000, 600,000, 500,000. But still, pretty good numbers. Now, let's compare that to the other musical artists that release concert movies. Top spot, Taylor Swift, Andre Rieu has nothing on Taylor Swift. We can see it here, clear as day. Taylor Swift, The Eras Tour, opened to $3.8 million, and Andre Rieu's highest is $1.4 million. But look at that. Just down the order, Justin Bieber, at his peak, we have Glee, the concert movie, One Direction, Katy Perry, BTS, Beyonce, U2, and the Jonas Brothers. You can see there. I've highlighted the musical ones in orange, but because we're dealing with such a long time span, let's adjust for inflation. And you can see Andre Rieu is still putting up really good numbers compared to the other massive musical artists that you might know. You know, you might have heard of Justin Bieber, you know Taylor Swift, you know Glee or One Direction or Katy Perry. So that's who Andre Rieu is, and that's how he stacks up, and that's why he keeps making these theatrical window releases. Big money, lots of money, consistent money, and up there with the best of them, only bested by Taylor Swift. That's not a bad deal, to be fair. And when it comes to the top 10 for 2025, all releases in 2025, what's the top grossing? There are no major changes on this chart this week. No movement, just slight balance adjustments. So sitting at number 1 is still a Minecraft movie, and Lilo and Stitch is still at number 2. Jurassic World Rebirth is at number 3. How to Train Your Dragon sits at number 4. F1 is trying to close that gap at number 5. And Superman follows up at number 6. Mission Impossible The Final Reckoning sits at number 7. Paddington in Peru at number 8. Fantastic Four The First Steps at number 9, trying to beat Paddington in Peru. And Bridget Jones' Mad About the Boy rounds out the top 10 with $16.5 million. That is how the top 10 currently stands. No major changes this week. Upcoming this week is in wide release, 4th of September, we have The Conjuring Last Rites, the 4th direct sequel in the Conjuring series/franchise, directed by Michael Chavez, starring Vera Farmiga, Patrick Wilson, and Mia Tomlinson. We also have The Roses, a new comedy drama from director Jay Roche, based on the novel by Warren Adler, starring Benedict Cumberbatch, Olivia Colman, Andy Samberg, and Kate McKinnon. In limited release, so check your smaller and indie cinemas, we have Sorry Baby, one of my more anticipated movies of the year, written, directed, and starring Ava Victor. We have Fight or Flight, a new action comedy directed by James Madigan, starring Josh Hartnett, Chathindra Chandran, and Katie Sackhoff. And we have Matarasi, a Tamil language action thriller out of India, directed by A.R. Mudragos. Over on streaming, on 4th of September, we have Highest to Lowest, a new movie over on Apple TV+. This is after a limited theatrical run, this is from director Spike Lee, and it's a remake of the Akira Kurosawa classic. This one is starring Denzel Washington and Jeffrey Wright. We also have Pokemon Concierge returning for Season 1 Part 2, returning after its 2-year hiatus. Netflix still failing to realize that people forget about things when you just abandon them for that long, but on September 4th, the last 6 episodes of Pokemon Concierge will release. We also have Wednesday returns on September 3rd with its second and final part of Season 2. Finally, The Walking Dead Daryl Dixon is returning for Season 3 over on Stan on September 7th. So if you're an enjoyer of the ever-continuing Walking Dead saga, this is the 3rd season of Daryl Dixon. With 6 movies for this week's challenge, let's dive into what I watched. First up, from It's What's Inside from 2024, written and directed by Greg Jardin, starring James Maroney, Brittany O'Grady, and David Thompson. One, I don't want to say too much about it, as it is better if you go in blind, but a small-scale, single-location movie, very akin to Bodies, Bodies, Bodies in setting and tone, except instead of playing on the horror slasher vibes, it plays on some fun sci-fi premises with some amazing editing. All the rest of my movies were from 2025, starting with my movie of the week, Bob Trevino Likes It. Written and directed by Tracy Lehman, starring Barbie Ferreira, John Leguizamo, and French Stewart. Well, I guess we reset the timer for the question, what was the last movie that made you cry? Amazing movie, hidden gem for 2025. Lots of emotion, but not in that common everything is a downer type drama. There are ups and downs like everything, and the movie maintains a positive and light tone somehow, just based on the content and how it's presented and how it's played. Barbie Ferreira does an absolute smashing performance as the lead role. Next was the latest movie from Darren Aronofsky, starring Austin Butler, Zoe Kravitz, Regina King, and Matt Smith. Normally with Aronofsky movies, I walk out going, that was great, but I'm never going to watch that again. This movie had the first part, but not the last part, which was amazing. Great movie, low-level street crime, looked amazing, top-shelf performances, and went in a few directions I wasn't expecting. It also has a cat called Bud, who was basically a co-lead, so bonus points for that. Next was The Pickup, directed by Tim Story and starring Eddie Murphy, Pete Davidson, and Keke Palmer. A fairly generic action comedy with some solid elements of both, and other parts falling pretty flat. Nothing too amazing here, but you could do worse. It was definitely the weakest movie I watched this week. Following on from that disappointment was The Ballad of Wallace Island, directed by James Griffith, starring Tom Basden, Tim Key, and Carey Mulligan. A small budget comedy drama with some flat British comedy from Tim Key with much awkward conversations, but a great time. Also had a lot of heart with many layers of what's going on with each of the characters involved. They all felt unique and individual. It was a great little movie. Finally was Happy Gilmore 2, the 29-year later legacy sequel directed by Kyle Newacheck, starring Adam Sandler, Dewey Bowen, Christopher McDonald, and Benny Safdie, along with many usual faces from Sandler Productions. Very big with the hit and miss approach with this one for me, with some parts landing and working really well, and other parts just not. Mileage may vary a large amount with this one if you do choose to watch it. But that was all I watched this week for this week's challenge. Looking at this week's challenge, we have the theme of two-word title. A nice, simple, easy one. 2 words in the title. People have kicked off already with Honey Don't and Half Nelson and Mad God, but let's look at my shortlist, which consists of a whole bunch of terrible movies like Parting Shots and Double Dragon, some amazing movies like Tokyo Story. We've got Sorry Baby, which I'll be catching this weekend. We've got Dogman from earlier this year, Theatre Camp, Holy Spider. There is so many on my shortlist this week, but we'll see how we go. And that is it for me this week. I am going to be catching Sorry Baby on the weekend, but we will be back next week, hopefully a little bit earlier, with all the box office numbers from the latest Conjuring movie to see how it stacks up against the other horror movies of 2025. And we'll be checking out The Roses and we'll see how that stacks up. But apart from that, that's it from me this week. Have a good one and watch more movies, and I'll see you next week. Bye!